Morning, everyone, or good evening, good afternoon, depending on where everyone is. Minister Burita, Minister Lapid, Dr. Gargash, Ambassador Al Khalifa, friends, it's very, very good to see all of you, and thank you for being here. And to our Israeli colleagues, Shana Tova.
Happy New Year.
You know, September 15th, 2020, leaders from Bahrain, Israel, the United Arab Emirates signed the Abraham Accords. A few months later, on December 10th, Israel and Morocco also signed a normalization agreement. Today, a year after the accords and normalization agreements were signed, the benefits continue to grow. We're seeing deepening diplomatic relationships. It's been a year of firsts. The first Israeli embassy in Abu Dhabi, the first embassy of the United Arab Emirates in Tel Aviv. This month, Israel named its first ambassador to Bahrain. And earlier this week, Bahrain's first ambassador to Israel presented his credentials. Minister Lapid, your visit to Morocco last month to meet with Minister Burita and others was the first by an Israeli minister to the kingdom since 2003. And both countries recently opened liaison offices that are expected to be upgraded to embassies by the end of the year. We're seeing growing people-to-people ties, even with the serious challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Diplomatic relations have made it possible to fly between Israel and Bahrain, Israel and Morocco, and Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Some of these flights have never been allowed before. Your governments are making it easier for your citizens to take advantage of those flights. For example, Israel and Bahrain were the first countries to mutually recognize one another's digital COVID-19 vaccine passports, which means that people from your countries can go to restaurants and concerts when visiting each other's countries without quarantine. And the people of your countries are seizing the opportunity. Again, despite COVID-19, more than 130,000 Israelis visited the United Arab Emirates just in the first 4.5 months after the accords were signed. There is a hunger to learn about each other's cultures, to see new sights, to try new foods, forge new friendships. All experiences that have been impossible for so long and for so many, and now they're making up for lost time. We're seeing new economic opportunities, innovations, collaborations. The United Arab Emirates has pursued significant investments in strategic sectors in Israel, including energy, medicine, technology, healthcare. Private firms across your countries are working together on everything from desalination to stem cell therapies. These opportunities would be exciting at any time, but they're particularly important today as we work to build back better from the devastating economic impact of the pandemic. The deepening diplomatic relationships also provide a foundation to tackle challenges that demand cooperation among nations, like reducing regional tensions, combating terrorism, mitigating the impact of the climate crisis. And we all must build on these relationships and growing normalization to make tangible improvements in the lives of Palestinians and to make progress toward the long-standing goal of advancing a negotiated peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Palestinians and Israelis deserve equal measures of freedom, security, opportunity, and dignity. This administration will continue to build on the successful efforts of the last administration to keep normalization marching forward. We'll do that in three main ways. First, we'll help foster Israel's growing ties with Bahrain, with Morocco, with the United Arab Emirates, as well as with Sudan, which has also signed the Abraham Accords, and Kosovo, which established ties with Israel at the beginning of the year. Second, we'll work to deepen Israel's long-standing relationships with Egypt and Jordan, partners critical to the United States, Israel, and Palestinians alike. It was 43 years ago, today, that Egypt and Israel signed the Camp David Accords, and next month will mark 27 years since Israel and Jordan signed the Wadi Araba Treaty. The visit to Cairo this week by Prime Minister Bennett to meet with President Sisi, the first trip at this level in over a decade, and the negotiations between Israel and Jordan around new agreements on water and trade, show how these relationships continue to build on the trailblazing agreements signed decades ago. And third, we will encourage more countries to follow the lead of the Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco. We want to widen the circle of peaceful diplomacy because it's in the interests of countries across the region and around the world for Israel to be treated like any other country. Normalization leads to greater stability, more cooperation, mutual progress, all things the region and the world need very badly right now. Let me close by bringing us back to the primary beneficiaries of normalization, people across borders whose lives will be improved by these new possibilities. Abdullah Bakir is an investor who co-leads the newly created UAE-Israel Business Council. He wants to spend a month in Israel to learn more about its people and culture so that he can better connect entrepreneurs in the two countries. He says, and I quote, "Everything is possible if we sit together and have a dialogue and understand each other." Ibrahim Nonu is the head of the Jewish community in Bahrain. Just last month, he led Shabbat services in a synagogue for the first time in 74 years, making Jewish life visible in Bahrain for the first time in generations. And so many people are eager to rekindle long-standing connections that had been cut off until now. More than 1 million Israelis have Moroccan heritage, including 5 ministers in Israel's current government. How meaningful it will be for more Israelis of Moroccan descent to travel back and forth between the two countries, rediscover cultural ties, and pass them on. The 2020 World Expo was delayed by COVID-19, but it will soon open in Dubai. The Abraham Accords had not yet been signed when Israel's pavilion was first conceived. It consists of 7 consecutive freestanding gates, no walls, completely open. Across the final gate is a giant sign that reads, "For tomorrow," in a script that combines Arabic and Hebrew letters. What an apt metaphor for the new horizons that open when countries are no longer closed to each other. Thanks to the countries here today, others who have joined, and the people forging ties between these nations, that vision is becoming a reality. May it be a model for others to follow. Thank you all.
Well, apparently, Mr. Secretary, being the one with the longest history as a host of talk shows, we need your direction. Who should start? So maybe my friend Nasser Bourita.
I think yes. I think our friend from Morocco is next up.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary of State, Your Highness, dear colleagues and friends. Allow me first of all to commend you, dear Tony, for this opportunity to renew together our commitment for peace. The normalization of relations with Israel is indeed a historic event that is worth commemorating. It fostered new hope and paved the way for an unprecedented momentum. Although Morocco's relationship with Israel preceded the Abraham Accords by a few decades, we do recognize and subscribe to the significant impetus generated by the resumption and revival of relations. As you all know, in our case, it is the US-Morocco-Israel agreement signed last December under the auspices of His Majesty King Mohammed VI that is the bedrock for the renewed relationship. For His Majesty, this signing reflects the profound links between the kings of Morocco and the large Moroccan Jewish community. At the same time, it ties in with the spirit and the dynamic generated by the Abraham Accords. I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate Morocco's sincere appreciation for the pivotal role of the United States as sponsor and guarantor to this process. Colleagues and friends, Winston Churchill was right when he said that peace will not be preserved by pious sentiments. Yes, the normalization accords are the result of goodwill, lots of it. But more than anything, we see action. Since the signing of the trilateral agreement and following the high instructions of His Majesty, many bilateral actions have been undertaken. Let me name a few. We have established a platform of bilateral dialogue and cooperation around 5 main sectorial working groups. Our government officials talk, meet, and work together. Around a dozen ministers initiated direct contacts laying the ground for the signing of more than 20 agreements. Diplomatic missions have been opened and are operational. We have established, and I welcomed myself, my friend Yair last month, and we look forward to other important visits, including of ministers of economy and defense. Channels have been opened between the business communities through the establishment of the Moroccan-Israeli Business Council and the Morocco-Israel Chamber of Industry. We are happy to note that exchanges grew 50% just in the first 6 months of 2021. 20 flights operating under 2 airlines companies already established their rotation, and 1 million Israeli tourists are expected per year to visit Morocco. Partnerships in sensitive sectors have been launched, including in cybersecurity and interoperability of forces through joint military special forces exercises like the HD Annual 21, to which Morocco participated. Colleagues and friends, the challenge of reconnecting was a great one, but it is now behind us. The challenges of preserving, improving, and giving sense to the normalization are still ahead of us. I see 4 elements or areas in this regard. First, the impact of the normalization process is meant to be felt in generations to come. We must actively and constantly demonstrate benefits on regional peace and security, on people-to-people relations, on business opportunities. These are the best arguments for other countries to follow suit. Second, relaunching the peace process is fundamental. Morocco believes that there is no other alternative to a 2-state solution with an independent Palestinian state within borders of June 67. Besides, and for His Majesty King Mohammed VI, Chairman of Al-Quds Committee, the status of Jerusalem has to be preserved as a common heritage of humanity, as a symbol of peaceful coexistence of the followers of the 3 monotheistic religions. Morocco has always played a significant, still discreet role in facilitating peace in the past and is ready to pursue this role today. Third, the normalization did not generate only sympathy, it generated animosity as well. Such animosity must be dealt with vigilance and solidarity. For example, and unfortunately, one neighboring country decided to sever its relations with Morocco, pretexting, among other things, the reestablishment of relations with Israel. Fourth, there is a need for a new regional order, where Israel is a stakeholder and no longer an outsider in its own region. This new regional order should not be perceived as against someone, but rather to benefit us all. Also, this new regional order should be based on an updated joint assessment of threats, but also on how to generate opportunities that favor stability and development for all. Colleagues and friends, today we are showing to the whole region and the world that brave actions must be taken by all of us in order to push the envelope a bit further for greater good. Again, thank you, my friend Tony, for convening this important meeting, and stay assured of Morocco's unwavering and continuous commitment to doing what it takes to contribute genuinely to regional peace and stability. I thank you.
Nasser, thank you so much. And now the floor is yours, Yair.
Yes. There's only one correction I want to make to my friend Nasser Bourita. This is not colleagues and friends, it's friends and colleagues. Friends foremost. As the secretary has mentioned, today, September 17th, is the 42nd anniversary of the signing on the White House lawn of the Camp David agreements. Menachem Begin, the late Menachem Begin, Anwar Sadat, and Jimmy Carter, who's still with us, stood on the lawn of the White House signing peace agreements. And since then, 2 of them has died, assassinated, and regimes and governments came to power and fall out of power in both countries, but the peace lasts. Because peace has this this energy to it and tendency to last longer than the people who are signing it, and may this peace last long after all of us are gone. And we have to also mention the fact that this Abraham Accords Club is open for new members as well. And one of our goals, our common goals, is to make sure that other countries will follow suit and join us in these accords and in this new era of cooperation and friendship. The relations between countries are always the right mix of interests and friendship that is based on values. What Henry Kissinger used to call the right mixture between the ideal and the real. And in this event, the ideal and the real are completing each other. And as long as all of us are involved, they will continue to complete each other in friendship. You look at the last year, ambassadors were appointed, embassies were built. We launched direct flights. We have mutual visits. We have signed dozens of agreements in this past month, and many are to follow. And we have more than $650 million in direct trade, and extra hundreds of millions in other agreements. We have cooperation in the academy. We have both with the UAE in Bahrain and with Morocco to follow. And we're going to dedicate the next couple of years to strategic projects of infrastructure, mostly water, energy, security, food, connectivity, and all of this is going to happen on a regional level. The COVID-19 has taught us all that there's no such thing as local problems or local challenges. All challenges and all problems are global. And the same way we have dealt together with the COVID-19, we're going to deal with positive things as well, with creating an economy, with creating an atmosphere, with creating a new discourse in the region. Looking forward, by the end of the month, I'm going to visit Bahrain for the first time ever for an Israeli minister. And we're talking also about, and I've discussed this in length with Minister Burita when I was in Morocco, we're going to have 3+1 and 3+2 and 3+3. We're gonna make this a bigger and bigger event and a bigger and bigger initiative for peace in the region. On top of this, I have only this week I have launched my initiative about economy for security in Gaza, trying to stabilize the Palestinian arena as well. So I invite you all to be part of this initiative that will help both for the Palestinian economy and to secure and help to secure the entire region. So this is an optimistic event, and it was created by optimistic people for a better future, and I couldn't be happier than doing this on the 42nd anniversary of the Camp David agreements. And a Happy New Year, Shana Tova to you all from the people of Israel.
Yair, thank you very, very much. And optimism is definitely a good thing. We need more of it, and we need to be energized by it. So I appreciate that very much. Ambassador Al Khalifa, Abdullah, over to you.